So if you're going to make changes in your life, the first thing that we want to do, God sometimes shows us, is, and the number one, if I have you just fill it out in your handout, number one is conflict with others. So number one in your handout is conflict with others. It always starts with the struggle with somebody else, right? It always starts. You know what? God uses your struggles with other people to get your attention. He really does. I mean, how many people are in relational conflict right now? It's something at, let's say, at home, you know, with your wife or your husband or your kids or your roommate or somebody like that, or at work, maybe with your boss or with, you know, maybe a co-worker you're in conflict with, or maybe it's in your spare time, your playtime, you know, maybe it's the guy you go bowling with on Friday night, maybe you're in conflict with him. So raise a hand, just how many people are in some kind of relational, I got a relational conflict just coming here today, you know? So how many people are in relational conflicts of some sort in their lives right now?
Come on,
Okay, the rest of you are lying. Okay. Actually, I want to give a round of applause for those people right here, okay? Everybody raise their hands. Just give a little bit of a round of applause. Because God's just trying to get your attention. God just wants you to be a better person, and that's a really cool thing.
Amen.
So let me give you a little background on the text that we're going to go over today. Jacob's entire life can be summed up in one word, and that's conflict. I mean, this guy came out of the womb in conflict with his twin brother Esau. Esau was the firstborn, and when he came out of the womb, Jacob was holding onto his ankle, his twin brother. I mean, and that's how Jacob got his name. His name means heel grabber or deceiver or cheater. So from that point on, Jacob and Esau fought continually. In fact, they pretty much fought their whole life. Jacob cheated his brother out of his inheritance, and so as you study the life of Jacob, he's always running from conflict. He's running from conflict from his brother, and his father-in-law, and his brother-in-law, and his wife, and his dad, and everywhere. I mean, when you read through this story, really the story of Jacob and Esau is between chapters 28 and 33 of Genesis. It's like reality television. I'm reading this going, this would be a really good reality television show, you know? Yeah. So we pick up the conflict here in 31, and Jacob's caught between a rock and a hard place. And he's got two conflicts going on here. One, he's got a conflict going on with his father-in-law. His father-in-law's name is Laban, and actually it's his uncle as well. It's his mother's brother. And Laban cheated Jacob into serving him for 14 years to marry his wife. Read the story, I'm sure you all have. And so he actually married two of Laban's daughters. And so there's bad blood between Laban and Jacob. And so he's fighting with Laban, and then he's fighting with his brother that, you know, he stole his inheritance and he never really made up. And it's right here in the handout here. It says, Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything from our father that he's owned. He's gained all the wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him had not been what it had been. You know, and isn't it funny how people, that's kind of the start of conflict. You notice that somebody's attitude toward you is not what it used to be, and things are changing. That's the start of conflict. And Jacob figures this out. He says, this isn't really working out so good, so he decides what he decides to do is take his family. He's got 11 sons by now. He's got 2 wives, both Laban's daughters. He's become very rich at this time. He's got a lot of sheep and goat, things like that. So he says, you know what? I'm out of here. We're split. We're taking off. So he's got Laban coming after him. And then he decides, well, maybe I'll make up with my brother. So he sends out a bunch of gifts to his brother Esau. And he sends a messenger with him, and the messenger comes back and says, how'd it go? And the messenger goes, not so good. He took the gifts, but he's coming after you with an army of 400 men. So, and it says in the Bible verse there in your handout, at the end it says, Jacob was terrified at the news. He was scared. He's got his brother, he's got his father-in-law coming after him, and then he's got his brother coming after him with an army army of 400 men, he's just reaping a lifetime of bad choices. He really is. And the next verse on your handout, here's where Jacob prayed. He's at the end of his rope. He's caught between a rock and a hard place. And he says, "Oh God, I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you've shown me. Save me, I pray, for I am afraid." He's scared to death. You know, Jacob's my boy. I can relate to Jacob so much because I prayed the same prayer. In a week and a half, it'll be 5 years ago. I prayed the same prayer. Not the exact same words, they were different words, but the meaning was the same, you know? And when I said that prayer almost 5 years ago, I was stepping from this make-believe world of I was God and I could do no wrong and, you know, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I stepped into reality. And reality is the reality choice. You know, realize that I'm not God. I admit that I'm powerless to control my own tendencies to do the wrong thing. I am. And my life is unmanageable. Nothing's going to happen before we get to this point in our lives, that we can accept this reality choice, you know? So you know the thing that we talked about earlier, the thing that we rose our hand about? Until you realize that you are powerless to change whatever that was that you raised your hand about, it isn't going to get any better. In fact, it's probably going to get worse. But when you go to God and you say, like Jacob did, say, "God, Lord, I don't deserve this. I'm a cheater. I'm a liar. I've been running from conflict all my life. But I need your help. I need your help. I'm broken." You know, that's reality. This is where the starting point is. This is where we can start. Nothing's going to happen in your life until you get out of denial. And you start realizing that you can't solve that problem on your own that you're having. You can't, you know. You can't make your marriage right. You can't make your relationships right. Or you can't make your kids right or your parents right, you know. You know, I need your help, God. That's what Jacob says. He says, I'm going to stop denial. I'm going to stop running. I'm going to start admitting that I have a need. I have a need for you. So Jacob gets this bright idea. So he's got Laban coming after him, his father-in-law and his uncle, because he took the grandkids. And any of you guys who are grandparents know that he ain't just taking the grandkids, right? Now coming after him. So Laban's coming after him one way, and then he's got an army of 400 men coming after him the other way. And so what he does, he decides that he's going to separate his family in two parts. So he divides them in half, and he sends half his family this way and the other half this way. You might want to read the whole story. We're in Genesis 32 now. So he divides them up in two groups, and he sends them out ahead, and something happens. He stays behind, and something happens that night. He gets in an unusual fight. He gets in a wrestling match, actually. He gets in a wrestling match with God. And that